Welcome everybody to our last class, the last part of the four-part series, the holidays that mark a Jewish year. I'm standing here under our sukkah. Last week you joined us and I showed you the sukkah without the decorations, but we are in the midst of the holiday of Sukkot, the celebration again that we talked about last week. And if you didn't get a chance to watch last week's class or the classes that came before on Yom Kippur and then on Rosh Hashanah, I encourage you to do so because it'll help you understand all of the holidays that mark the beginning of the new year. I also remind you that if you are taking part in the online class and if you have questions, right below the videos of the classes is the blog where you can post questions and comments, and I will be answering those. In advance, I want to thank all of you who have logged in and taken part in the class, those of you who have posted comments on the blog or have sent me emails individually, privately. I've enjoyed this. We do have some more classes coming up later on in the year, in the beginning of next year, and I urge you to look above the classes on the blog here to see the schedule. Tonight's class will probably be a shorter class than others because Simchat Torah is a holiday about joy. It's just about simple, pure joy. And it's also the youngest of the holidays that we've talked about. It's not a biblical holiday. It's a holiday that probably developed in the Middle Ages. Simchat Torah means the joy of the Torah, and the holiday itself really celebrates the completion of the yearly cycle of Torah readings. We end the cycle on Simchat Torah, and we begin the cycle on Simchat Torah. So we end the Torah on Simchat Torah, and we begin it all over again. From Simchat Torah of this year to Simchat Torah of next year, we read the Torah in small segments, each segment known as a parsha, and we read it for the most part consecutively in order, starting with the book of Genesis, going all the way through to the book of Deuteronomy. At times we jump around depending upon holidays and other events that require us to read other parts of the Torah. Again, it's not a biblical holiday. Simchat Torah is not a biblical holiday. It probably developed during the Middle Ages. The celebration takes place in Israel on the same day as Shmini Atzeret, which we talked about last week, or the 22nd day of Tishrei, which is this year, September 26th, Wednesday night, the 25th, through the sundown of the 26th. Outside of Israel, and specifically in conservative and Orthodox communities, Simchat Torah is observed a day later on the 23rd of Tishrei, or from Thursday evening, September 26th, to Friday evening, September 27th. And we discussed the reasons for the extra days in previous classes. In my community, we follow the Israeli calendar, and we observe Simchat Torah this coming Wednesday night through Thursday night, or the 22nd of Tishrei, and we are located here in South Florida. Simchat Torah revolves completely around the Torah itself, and as I'm standing under the sukkah, you should be able to see our 4 Torah scrolls. Before Rosh Hashanah, on the holiday of Slichot, which we didn't really touch on much in our class, we dress our Torah scrolls in white. We've talked a lot over the past 4 weeks about the symbolism of white. At the end of Simchat Torah, when we put the Torahs back in, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes, we actually put our regular yearly Torah covers back on, marking really what I like to see as the end of the holidays that mark the new Jewish year. The Torahs are taken out of the Ark during the Simchat Torah celebration, And depending upon what community you're a part of, those celebrations either take place on the evening of Simchat Torah, or the evening and the daytime, or just the daytime. My community down here in South Florida, our Simchat Torah celebration really is the evening of Simchat Torah, or Wednesday night this year. So all of our scrolls are taken out of the ark, and they're danced around the congregation with music and with singing. Again, depending upon what community you're in, the level of music and celebration might vary slightly. Again, all of our scrolls come out and are carried around in what we call hakafot, or processions that circle the congregation, much like the Hoshana rituals that we talked about last week in the Sukkot class. Traditionally, there are 7 hakafot, 7 processions with the Torahs going around. Different people hold the Torahs, and as the Torahs are processed around the congregation, again, there's music. Some congregations incorporate actually musical instruments, klezmer band. It's a really wonderful celebration, and the Torahs are incorporated into that celebration as they're danced around. Children are really incorporated into the fun. Sometimes they're given flags, Simchat Torah flags, and they walk around as part of the procession. In our community and in other communities, with the help of adults, this is the one time of year where we actually allow the kids to actually carry a Torah. They carry a Torah during a hakafah. We have some small Torahs that aren't kosher scrolls, but we let the kids carry those as they take part in the festivities. Traditionally, on Simchat Torah, children actually get an aliyah. They're called up to the Torah. Usually that's reserved for kids becoming bar, bat mitzvah, and older into adulthood. But they actually get an aliyah, and they're brought under a talis, and a special prayer is said for them because they represent the future. And as we end the Torah reading and begin it over again and begin a new year, we realize how important our future is. So if you haven't had a chance to go to a Simchat Torah celebration, wherever you are, I hope you'll bring your kids with you to that celebration, because they really are an important part of the process. After the procession of the Torahs, whether it's 7 hakafot or 3 hakafot or just general dancing with the Torah scrolls, depending upon your community, it's time to do the real ritual, which is the reading of the end of the book of Deuteronomy, and then the reading of the beginning of the book of Genesis. Someone or a group of people are honored with the aliyah for the reading of the end of Deuteronomy. Someone's called up to read, and people are given that honor. And this aliyah is known as Simchat Torah, or the groom of the Torah. It's the name of it. And Deuteronomy is read. And once Deuteronomy is read, it's time to begin Genesis. So someone else or a group of people is honored with this aliyah, this honor to read the beginning of the Torah. And this aliyah is known as Hatan Breshit, or the groom of Genesis. Genesis, also known as Breshit in Hebrew. In my community, this is the aliyah that we give to the children as we read the book of Genesis. And an adult, often myself or our cantor, reads the beginning of the story of Genesis. Also, another thing that we do in our community here, and many communities elsewhere do the same thing, we take, after we process with the hakafot, we take one of our Torah scrolls and we completely unwrap it in our sanctuary. We have all of the adults form a huge circle. We ask any adult and all the kids who are not going to be part of holding the Torah to sit in the middle. And at that point, we begin to unwrap the entire scroll, the adults gently placing one hand at the bottom and one hand at the top, and the scroll completely surrounds the entire room, and everybody who's inside it just feels the power of the Torah wrapping them up. It's an incredible experience. If you're close to Ramat Shalom, if you're down here in South Florida, I invite you to join us Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. We're actually doing something very, very special this year. We are unwrapping our oldest scroll, which is about 350 years old. We call it our Holocaust Torah. It is a survivor of the Holocaust, coming from a community in Czechoslovakia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, that was destroyed by the Nazis. The scroll survived, and for the first time ever, we are going to be unwrapping that scroll and seeing it in its entirety on Simchat Torah. When you do unwrap the Torah, and the two ends are brought together, the book of Genesis is on one side, at the very beginning there, and the end of Deuteronomy is on the other side. So the two poles, what we call the Eitz Chaim, are brought together, and so when you read the end of Deuteronomy, it's just logical to go right to the beginning, to the book of Genesis, and therefore we create this circle of Torah, and you realize that it's a never-ending cycle. For centuries, we have been just reading this story and getting such incredible insight from it each time we read it. Lots of times people don't understand that we read that last year. Well, that's exactly the point. Each year we read it and we go deeper into it and we understand more about it because there is so much in Torah for us to learn. Once we read Genesis, we then have to wrap the Torah back up, but what's great is it's time to wrap it in a way so that we can read the book of Genesis. We've just been reading from the end of Deuteronomy as we finish the year, so it's time to wrap the Torah all the way back up at the beginning and begin the new cycle. Once we rewrap it, we put the Torah away, we take our Torah, the white covers off of our scrolls and put our regular covers back on, and it is time to begin a wonderful new year. The sukkah comes down, the regular Torah covers are back on, and 5774, or if you're watching this in years ahead, any year that begins has officially begun. You can see that as Jews, we just don't have one New Year's Day. We have a series of holidays, starting with the month of Elul, going into the Slichot celebration, Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of repentance, of tshuva, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, right before that, Hoshana Rabbah, which we talked about last week, and then Shmini Atzeret, and then Simchat Torah. Just allowing ourselves to renew ourselves as people, as couples, as families, as congregations, as larger communities, as a global Jewish community, and renewing our Torah as well. And then at the same time, realizing how beautiful the world is that we live in, celebrating some time in a sukkah, and having wonderful meals and wonderful times with the people that we love and care about, and starting our new year in a joyous, wonderful way. Again, I hope that our learning together has been helpful, has given you some insight into the way we as Jews begin our new year. And I look forward to maybe having you in a classroom face-to-face or in our congregation down here in South Florida. But again, I look forward to continuing learning with you online if that's the way that we will connect until we meet face-to-face one of these days. I thank all of you again for learning with me. Please take this time tonight to ask any questions that you have about this class or any of the previous classes. I know this class, as I said, is much shorter than the others. And please, if you get a chance, try to find a Simchat Torah celebration near you that you can enjoy with family, friends, and a community. I look forward to learning with you all again. I wish you all a good night.